Decade. Anyway, yes, I'm Greg Quinlan. I came out of the homosexual lifestyle in 1992, and I made a decision to do that. I lost 100 of my friends and acquaintances from AIDS. I'm a nurse, and I watched many of them pass away. I stopped counting after that, and there have been many more since then. Just a few months ago, I buried another friend of mine who had AIDS, who had come to the Lord. So as a nurse, I was very active in the homosexual lifestyle because of the AIDS epidemic. I got involved with the Human Rights Campaign Fund, as it was called then, the largest gay and lesbian political organization in the country, ranks as the ninth largest of all independent political action committees, and is chiefly responsible for the billions of dollars in AIDS research and support money that comes from the federal government. I still remember the commercial. So as a volunteer from there, I founded the Dayton Committee for the Human Rights Campaign, raising tens of thousands of dollars for this organization because I thought this is the group we need to get the billions of dollars, literally, that we need to find a cure for AIDS. But I also got hooked in after time. It didn't take long, but after time I was into the entire homosexual agenda. But I was very dissatisfied, discontent. I was watching television, a lot of those Christian, shows, the lady with the pink wig, and Jesus the Lord. Then there was Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, The Rivers of Mascara. There's always good entertainment, and there were a couple of others that were out there, but they had testimonies of people who had left the homosexual lifestyle. And two things were happening, in a double-minded man that I was. I said, that's a lie, that's not true. And in the same time, in my heart, I was saying, God, is it true? I don't have to be gay anymore. So it was that Thanksgiving weekend in 1992 that I gave my heart back to Jesus Christ. It's been a journey ever since. So I know I look 28, but I'm 58. So it has been a journey. I've been at this a good long time. I'm past president of PFOX. I was with the Pro Family Network, Christian Coalition of Ohio way back in the day. Testified in 27 states on to stop gay marriage before the Supreme Court decided to legislate from the bench. So I've done a lot of things here, but I'm here to talk to you about something else entirely. But before we get started, I just want you to know, I was on a missions trip with Stephen Bennett Ministries in 2006. It's been over a decade now. And this lovely lady next to me there in that picture, Nike Janet Moynes, she's since changed her name to just Janet Moynes. And that's us in Israel there at the World Pride event. And we were there to be missionaries, to witness to these people who were there for World Pride. And we were there during the war. There were 2 wars going on in Israel at that time. It was a fun event. But we've done this for a long time. I'm here to talk to you about lying to our children in education. And I'm going to explain this real quick with my experience to tell you how this all happened, how fast it's come about. And a lot of this has happened because parents have stayed quiet. HIV/AIDS, what does that have to do with education? It has to do with everything. You know, what is it, Saul Alinsky, never let a crisis go to waste? Well, they didn't. When the AIDS epidemic hit back in the early 80s, early to mid-80s, they took this and used it to their advantage. HIV/AIDS was a gold mine for the homosexual agenda. And I'm going to explain to you why. In the early 1880s, when HIV came to America, the homosexual activists used the crisis of HIV/AIDS to their advantage. Safe sex. Remember how they came up with the idea of safe sex? You know, wearing the condoms, all the condom distribution that they went through too. So safe sex then became safer sex. It's no such thing as either. It's suicidal sex. Gay men now have this thing, the Stride bill, which is the AIDS cocktail, which has 4 medications in it. They now have come up with something called PrEP, or Truvada, which is 2 of the AIDS cocktail. It's supposed to be a prophylactic, a preventative from getting AIDS. So in other words, you can still have unprotected sex as long as you're on PrEP. Stupid. Stupid. It's a mutating virus. You don't think it won't build a resistance to this? By the way, and thank you, President Obama, now that we have relationships with Cuba, there is a strain of AIDS that is coming out of the islands, particularly Cuba, that is resistant to all of the HIV medications. All of them. So, that's for the first time in America, the general public found out what a dental dam was. None of us knew what it was until AIDS came along. How to protect yourself with oral sex. This is going to be graphic. I want to warn you ahead of time. I'm not here to be X-rated, but I'm here to tell you the truth. We can't hide anymore. Then we have sex without intercourse, where we were teaching kids in school through the sex education curriculum how to masturbate. That's exactly what we were doing. how to have sex, how to rub up against each other, how to help each other, mutual masturbation. This was what we were telling our kids to do so that they wouldn't get infected with AIDS. Do you see how this was just the boondoggle, the gold mine for the LGBT to recruit kids? Because sex is extremely addictive. I'll talk about that in a minute too. Sex education with instruction and operation on anal, oral, and vaginal sex, and that started in the 80s, went through really big in the 90s, and it's still going strong today. And what they would do is they would bring in gay activists to teach them about dental dams and how to apply a condom. Social engineering. So they brought in the hate crimes laws. So if you don't agree with me, then obviously you're a hater, and then you have, violated my civil rights. I can do civil lawsuits. I can file complaints with the Division on Civil Rights if they do in New Jersey. All these things that are there. And of course, they worked very hard politically to make sure that in many of these states, the appointees or the heads and the directors of these divisions on civil rights happen to be out and open homosexuals. Think you're going to get a fair hearing? Anti-bullying laws. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a missionary to New Jersey. I'm originally from Ohio. God sent me to the Garden State, and I argued with him all the way there, but I lost the argument. So, being obedient to the Lord, I'm a Garden Stater. Registered in the minority of the Republican Party in the Garden State. We have this anti-bullying law. All done to also react to a crisis of a young man who decided to jump off the George Washington Bridge and kill himself because his roommate decided to film him having an intimate encounter with somebody of the same sex. So they took that and put in the bullying laws. The bullying laws are designed to silence anyone who has anything to say negatively about homosexuality. Okay, outlawing heterosexual therapy. Now that started in California, and I stopped in New Jersey because that stopped with me. Let me explain to you what I just said. You know the therapy bans that are going out all over the country, these therapy bans. Do you know what that really means? Heterosexual therapy is illegal to minors in the states and municipalities that pass this. Heterosexual therapy is illegal. Illegal. Outlawed. That's a little one-sided, isn't it? How can that be? Because that's what they've done. Heterosexual therapy is outlawed. Because do you know the fantastic story that came out in New Jersey? We were sitting and I brought ex-gay therapists, one from my own state, Dr. Tara King, and others, and parents who came and testified against that bill. We had this fantastic story about a man who claimed to be a woman, and he talked about, and he was reading his testimony, word for word. Now that's the first thing. Because when you're somebody who's experienced some real trauma in your life, I remember a lot of the trauma that's happened in my lifetime. I don't need to write it down. It's all right here, and I can express it right from memory by rote. So this guy is reading it. He talked about how he was from Toms River, New Jersey, and that his parents sent him to an Assemblies of God concentration camp called True Directions. Now, I happen to be an Assemblies of God minister. I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm from Ohio. There wasn't any camp called True Directions. We had this one camp that was a converted farm, and the boys' dorm was a converted chicken coop. And he talked about electroshock therapy. I said, really? The only time he would have gotten electrocuted is when it rained through the chicken coop. And you remember those long wires that held down the incandescent bulb? If you touched that thing, you might have got electrocuted. But that was the only electroshock therapy you got there. The other therapy you might have gotten is that if you weren't the first one in the shower in the morning, every shower was ice cold after that. All right? So it was ridiculous. Talking about IV therapy to induce vomiting at a church camp? Who does that? That just never happened. And the horrors of horrors, and I'll give him credit for this, he had to flirt with the opposite sex. That is intimidating, I get it, okay. But no, that was the horrors there. We found out, we couldn't figure this out. It was so fantastic, you gotta be kidding. We're looking for this True Directions camp, and we're going all over the place, and then finally, Richard Cohen finds it. It came from a movie starring drag queen RuPaul. He read word for word, scene for scene, scenario to scenario about this camp from a movie.